Welcome to Darasa Online. I'm Mr. Novatus Gabriel Moyo. I'll be presenting to you chemistry, and I'll be teaching, making a revision in Form 2, and specifically it will be a topic of Form 1, and that topic is called Laboratory Techniques and Safety, and I'll be based on specifically on laboratory rules and safety precautions in the laboratory. So, dear students, be with me, enjoy the lesson. Dear students, you might ask yourself why Mr. Moyo is revising on this topic. It's because most of the students have been responding not good on the questions asked in different exams in this topic. So please, you should be with me specifically in the subtopic of rules and safety precautions in a chemistry laboratory. Now we shall start by discussing on what is a laboratory. Dear students, a laboratory is a special room or building designed and used for scientific experiments. You should be aware that not every room can be a laboratory. A laboratory should be so special. And that's why we say that it's a special room, a special building designed and used for scientific experiments. There are several types of laboratories. You can have a chemistry laboratory, you can have a physics laboratory, you can also have a biology laboratory. Now, today we shall be discussing on a chemistry laboratory. What is a chemistry laboratory? A chemistry laboratory is a special room which is designed for conducting chemical experiments. I said that A chemistry laboratory, it's a special room, a special place, a special building whereby chemical experiments are conducted or chemical experiments are performed or are done. Now, a chemistry laboratory contains some chemicals. It also contains some tools, and these chemicals and tools are used during experiments. It also contains the equipments which are known as apparatuses. Now today, students, we shall specifically based on the rules or the guidelines that has to be followed when entering the laboratory, during experiments and after the experiments. So because of the presence of these chemicals and the tools, one has to be careful when he is entering the laboratory. One should be careful when he or she is performing some experiments, and the one should also be careful after conducting an experiment. Now we shall concentrate into rules before doing practical activities, and thereafter we shall see rules when doing practical activities and the rules after doing practical activities. So there are three categories: rules, Now class, let us now start discussing what are these rules that must be followed before doing practical activities, and what are the rules that has to be followed during practical activities and the rules after practical activities. Rule number 1, before practical activities, it states that don't enter in a laboratory without a permission or presence of a teacher or a laboratory assistant. Rule number 1, students, tells us that we need to have permission before entering the laboratory. So when you students are prepared for the practical session, don't just enter within the laboratory without a permission. Wait for the permission from your laboratory assistant, wait for the permission from either technician or subject teacher concerned, and wait for the instructions, and wait for the instructions on what type of experiment are you going to perform. There is an advantage of having a permission before doing experiments. It's because the chemicals prepared by your teachers are well known by your teachers. So you need to have a permission so that you may not disturb the chemicals prepared by your teachers. Or within the laboratory, there are many students performing different experiments of different classes. So when you enter in the laboratory without a permission, you may also disturb the setup experiment of the other class. So you better wait for the permission, better wait for the instructions, then you are allowed to enter in the laboratory. Let's now see the second rule. The second rule says that dress appropriately for the laboratory activities. Do not wear loose or flop clothing, tie back long hair, roll up long sleeve, do not wear shorts, or walk with barefoot or sandals. Rule number 2, class, is telling us to wear appropriate clothes. Is telling us not to wear loose or flop clothing. There is the advantage of this rule. Dear students, if you go to the laboratory while putting on loose or flop clothing, there is a possibility of your flop clothes to come in contact with some chemicals. And most of the chemicals in the laboratory are poisonous, are toxic, are harmful, and the others are explosive. So when you are within the laboratory, you should make sure that you have worn appropriate clothes. But rule number 2 also still says that tie back long hair. There are some students, there are some people who are working in the laboratory having long hair. It is very much advised that you should tie your long hair back, because long hair can accidentally come in contact with the open flames. Long hair can accidentally come in contact with the poisonous chemicals, harmful chemicals, or any other chemicals that can bring hazards. But also you are told not to wear shorts. At least they say that at least you should have a cloth that is beneath your knees, but you should roll up your long sleeve. If you have worn a shirt with the long sleeve, you roll, and do not walk with bare foot or sandals. Please never ever walk with bare foot in the laboratory, or never put on sandals, because when you put on sandals, your open fingers are at risk of coming in contact with these harmful chemicals. Let's see rule number 3. Rule number 3 says keep the windows open for proper ventilation. Always laboratories have large windows. Therefore, when you go to the laboratory, open the windows for proper ventilation. There is an advantage of having proper ventilation. You see, proper ventilation makes you to be safe, makes the environment of breathing to be okay. Also, proper ventilation prevents you from contamination with the harmful gases. Therefore, fresh air leads to the comfortable environment, the whole comfortable environment of breathing of you and your friends. So please, you are very much advised to open windows for proper ventilation. And also proper ventilation leads to moving out of the harmful gases or poisonous gases. So your laboratory should have proper ventilation to avoid suffocation. You are also required to master the location of all exits. Please, when you are entering in your laboratory, master the location of all exits. Master the location of the exit door. Master the location of the exit of waste. Master the location of exit of harmful gases. It's because within the laboratory there are dangerous chemicals. So in case of an accident, it can be very easy for someone to move out of the lab. I hope we're together. Now, class, let's now discuss on the laboratory rules during practical activities. Now, you are now starting your practical activity. When you start your practical activity, you need first to read instructions carefully before you start an activity. You are required to read instructions carefully before you start an activity. This has an advantage. Reading instructions carefully, class, makes you to understand the type of the activity you are going to perform. Reading instructions makes you to be aware on what you are going to perform. Instructions makes you to understand the procedure, the setup procedure of conducting your experiments. And the instructions makes you to know what specific chemicals will you use during performing your experiments. So it's very much that every student during practical activity should read the instructions properly before starting any activity. Rule number 2 during practical activities: if you don't understand something, ask your teacher before proceeding. This is very much important. If you go to the laboratory, now you're starting your experiment, you are now starting doing your activities, please, if you don't understand anything, you better call for the assistance from your teacher or laboratory assistant or laboratory technician. This is because if you perform an experiment without understanding what you are doing, you can lead into some accidents. You can lead into mixing of chemicals. You can lead into long use of the chemicals. So you better ask and understand the procedures, and then you perform your experiment. Number 3, that you are required to read the labels on reagents bottles carefully to make sure you have the right substance. Do not interchange the labels. Rule number 3 tells us that you should label the reagents bottles. You have now started doing your practical activities. The bottles reagents you are using should be labeled. You should not interchange the labels. This is very much important class. It's because most of the lab chemicals look like they might have the same color. Take an example of hydrochloric acid and the water. They are both colorless. So if they are not labeled, will lead to long use of a reagent, and they will result into poor performance, and it can lead also to an accident. So you better label the bottle reagents that you are using. Take an example, you are required to use 5 ml of hydrochloric acid and 10 ml of sodium hydroxide. If you exchange the labels, instead of putting 5 ml of hydrochloric acid, you put 5 ml of sodium hydroxide. You will have already changed the instructions, and you will now end up on getting poor answers or wrong answers. Rule number 4, do not eat or drink in the laboratory. This rule, students, I know most of the students like eating, most of the students like drinking. Please, it is strictly prohibited to drink or eat in the laboratory. Why? It's because within the laboratory there are harmful chemicals. They might come in contact with your drinks, they might come in contact with your food. So you are very much advised, not to drink in the laboratory. Some do say that, no, I'm sure this is my drink, it is not contaminated. Students, your drink can be contaminated accidentally without you knowing. There are also gases produced, so you never know. You better not drink when you are in the laboratory. And sometimes you can mix and drink some chemicals. Take an example of Fanta orange and a methyl orange indicator. So you can think that you are drinking, you want to drink your Fanta and find yourself drinking methyl orange indicator, which is very harmful. It's a chemical. Therefore, don't eat anything that you find in the laboratory. Some laboratories have got refrigerators. Please, please, if you find something that is eatable, don't take it, because it can be harmful and it can lead to harm you. Rule number 5, that do not taste or smell chemicals unless advised how it should be done. Dear students, you are actually not advised to smell chemicals within the laboratory. It's because some chemicals are poisonous, some chemicals are harmful, some chemicals are toxic. So it is said that you better smell the air currents of that chemical and while pointing your hand on the source of that chemical. It's because some chemicals can irritate your nose while smelling. You can get some irritation. So don't smell anything unless you are advised and instructed by your laboratory technician or teacher how to smell that chemical substance. Use fume chambers when carrying out experiments where harmful gases and vapor are given out. Use fume chambers. You know, fume chambers, these are special place within, it's a special place within a laboratory whereby experiments that involves production of harmful gases are done. Therefore, when you are doing an experiment that you know it will lead to evolving of harmful gases or poisonous gases, you are required to carry them in a fume chamber. And also, a fume chamber has spaces for moving out these waste gases, these unwanted gases. So please, you should not work on the benches, on open benches within the laboratory. Conduct your experiment that you know it can lead to poisonous gases within the fume chamber. It's because if someone inhales these poisonous gases, or if someone inhales these harmful gases, can lead him to get some harmful or some discomfort or irritation, and it can also lead to loss of smell. Only perform intended experiments. Dear students, if you go in the laboratory, you are required to perform the intended experiments. Don't create your own experiments. Don't start your own experiments. Don't interfere with others' experiments. You find someone has gone in the laboratory, after doing or conducting his experiments, he sees that he still have time or she still have time, and she can decide to test something to see what results will be. You are actually advised not to conduct your own experiments, not to interfere others' experiments. You go to the laboratory with the special purpose of conducting a certain experiment. You go and perform that intended experiments. It's because conducting unintended experiments can lead to some accidents. Are we together, students? Also, do not spill liquids on the floor. Do not spill liquids on the floor. This is also very much important because spilled liquids on the floor can lead to accidents such as falls. Spilled liquids on the floor can lead to burn. Spilled liquids on the floor can lead to either irritation or can lead someone into a danger which is unnecessary. So if there are spilled liquids on the floor, one is required to inform the laboratory technician so as a proper apparatus or a proper treatment of removing such kind of spills. Rule number 9, report breakage or accidents to the teacher immediately. This rule requires you to report any kind of breakage to the teacher or to the laboratory assistant. Requires you to report any accident immediately as it occurs. Why? It's because when you report an accident to the teacher or a laboratory technician, you can get an immediate help. You can get an immediate assistance. Do not ignore that this is a minor cut. I don't inform the teacher. there is no minor cut in the laboratory. You should inform your teacher, you should inform your laboratory assistant what kind of an accident was that. What type of burns? Is it due to chemicals? Is it due to hot liquids? Or is it due to open flames? Or is it due to touching hot objects? So you better inform your laboratory assistant for the assistance. Also report any kind of breakage. Let's say that a test tube was fallen down. So if a test tube has fallen down and then it broke up, you need to inform your teacher so that he may know how to correct those wastes and keep them to the specific disposing area. Because someone can come and touch them and they can cause also, or they can cut him or her and cause another accident. So you better inform your teacher. When heating substances, direct the mouth of the test tube away from you or others. Do not point burns or hot substance towards yourself or other people. You see, you find someone is doing an experiment, and that experiment involves heating, and through that heating, some gases are given out. You are required not to direct the mouth of the test tube to your face. Either you are also not required to direct the mouth of the test tube to someone's face, to your friend. Direct the mouth of the test tube to the other side where there is no person. This is because some hot liquids do fry. Some chemicals are explosive. Some chemicals produce poisonous gases, or some chemicals produce harmful gases. So when you direct this mouth of a test tube to your face, it can lead to some irritation, it can lead to some harm. So you better direct it to the other side where there is no any person. Do not use dirty, cracked, or broken apparatus. Students, you should be very much careful when you are using these apparatuses in the laboratory. Do not use dirty apparatuses. It's because dirty apparatuses can mislead you, can be contaminated. Therefore, using contaminated chemicals cannot lead to positive answers. It cannot lead to answers required. So avoid using contaminated apparatus. Also, do not use cracked or broken apparatus. Students, you are also advised not, let's say you are using a cracked beaker or a cracked test tube. You can touch it accidentally, then it breaks. When it breaks, it can result into an accident to you. It can result into burns, it can result into cuts, because maybe it had some chemicals and it had cracks. Therefore, you should not use dirty apparatus, cracked apparatus, or broken apparatus, because they are very dangerous, they can harm you. Turn off any gas or water taps that are not in use. Yes, you find students, you are in the laboratory conducting experiments, and someone opens the water tap or a gas tap and leaves with the gas flowing or leaves with the water flowing. This is economically not good, and the flowing of water, excess water, can lead to spillage of liquids, which can result in falls. Therefore, you better keep off or turn off the water taps. Also, much more accumulation of gases in the laboratory can lead to accidents such as fire and other accidents. So you better turn off the water taps and the gas taps. Now, let us see some of the rules that can be used after practical activities. You have now done your experiments, you have now performed your practical activity. Now, what should you do? After practical activities, 1, appropriately dispose of any wastes. After you have done your experiment, student, you need to dispose your wastes. Let's say you were doing an experiment that resulted into formation of precipitates. you should go to the specific area of disposing waste and dispose those precipitates. These wastes from experiments are also dangerous when are not properly disposed. That's why the guideline tells you that appropriately dispose of any waste. They should be disposed appropriately so that they cannot result into accidents within the laboratory. The second rule after practical activities is that you should clean up the equipment and store it safely. You should clean up the equipment and store it safely. Some of you, when you go to the laboratory, they just perform an experiment and they leave the apparatus uncleaned. Please, after conducting your practical activity, you are required to clean all the apparatuses and you are required to store them very safely. Cleaning up of the apparatus removes the chemicals that were used in that apparatus. So when you clean the apparatus, you make them safe for the other experiment. So even when someone comes and takes the specific apparatus, we will find it clean. But those apparatuses should be stored safely. If they are to be stored in a cupboard, in shelves, store them safely. Don't put them on the edge of the benches. It's because they will break. And if they break, they lead maybe to glassware. And these glasswares can harm you. So store the cleaned apparatus very safely. Turn off the gas and the water taps. This is another laboratory rule after doing practical. Now, student, you have done your practical. You should now turn off the gases. You should turn off the water taps so that much more gas cannot keep on being used, and it should be used for next time for the other experiments. So you better turn off the gas taps and the water taps after conducting your practical activity. Also, number 4, wash your hands with soap and water. You have now washed. You now washed your apparatuses. You now close the water taps. Where you are required to wash your hands with water and soap. And then you should wash your hands with the flowing water. Wash them properly and thoroughly, because washing your hands after practical activities makes you safe. It prevents you being contaminated with poisonous chemicals, toxic chemicals, harmful chemicals. So you better wash your hands with a lot of water and soap so as you can be safe. Those are the rules after conducting your practical activity. Now let's see the safety measures. Safety measures are steps to protect against harm. Safety measures are steps to protect someone against harm. Let's start one by another. 1. The laboratory should be equipped with the working fire extinguishers and other equipments with clear instructions and how to use them in case of fire. The first safety measures tells us that the laboratory should be well equipped with fire extinguishers, and there should be the instructions on how to use them. Dear students, any chemistry laboratory should have these fire extinguishers. It is because there is a possibility of occurrence of an accident of fire. So everyone working in the laboratory should be aware of the instructions on how to use a fire extinguisher. And the fire extinguisher should be placed somewhere where it is seen by everybody. It should be placed somewhere whereby it can be traced by anyone. And everybody working in the laboratory should have the instructions on how to use fire extinguishers in case of an accident of fire. Number 2, cupboards, storage cabinets, and drawers should have locks. This is to ensure that one does not accidentally get into contact with the harmful substances or interfere with the equipment. This safety measure tells us on the proper storage of different reagents, that the cupboards should have drawers. Let's think of the concentrated acids. The reagent bottles of concentrated acids should be stored in cupboards with drawers, and those drawers should have locks. This prevents contamination with the harmful substances, prevents contamination with the toxic substances. So the reagents bottles and other chemical substances should be properly stored in cupboards with drawers, and they should be well locked to avoid contamination with these harmful chemicals, which can result into accidents or which can harm someone that has come in contact with them. Another safety measure is that containers for chemicals should be checked regularly to ensure they do not leak. They should have stoppers or covers which should be secured when the chemicals are not in use. You see, this rule tells us that containers for chemicals should be checked regularly. The containers of chemicals, students, should be checked regularly so as to check if there is a leakage, either a leakage of chemicals, because some chemicals are volatile. So when there is any kind of leakage, you will find that that kind of a chemical has vaporized, and through vaporization you will find it that it has lost its reactivity strength. Therefore, containers should be checked regularly that there is no leakage. But also, when the leakage occurs, can lead to harmful substance, or it can lead to accidents, it can lead to different hazards within the laboratory. So the containers should be much more checked and regularly so as to avoid some accidents that can occur in the laboratory. Number 4, stored chemicals should be inspected regularly to ensure they have not expired. So, students, stored chemicals should be checked regularly to avoid using expired chemicals. The effect of using expired chemicals is that it can lead to accidents, it can lead to different products which are harmful. It can lead to harmful gases. So we better check the chemicals stored regularly so as to avoid using expired chemicals. And expired chemicals should be well disposed because they are no longer required in the laboratory. And they never ever use expired chemicals. And this should not be in a chemistry laboratory. This should also be even at your home. Avoid using expired drugs, expired medicine. You check on the labels when should it be expired, and then if it is expired, you stop using it. Let's see safety measure number 5. All persons using the laboratory should ensure they wear appropriate protective clothing to minimize exposure to hazards. This is quite true that when you are working in the laboratory, you need to have proper clothing, such as lab coats, such as goggles, such as, if possible, masks if they are required, and also closed shoes. These are very much important because, taking an example of a lab coat, it can prevent you from having dirty clothes due to spilled liquids, but in case of fire also a lab coat can prevent you to some extent. So when you are in the laboratory, you better put on the appropriate clothes for conducting experiments. Any chemical spills should be cleaned immediately. This is also another safety measure, that if it happens that you find the chemical spills on the floor, inform the laboratory technician, because a chemical spill can be a concentrated acid, it can be a poisonous substance, it can be a harmful substance. So ask for laboratory assistant on the ways on how to dispose or to clean the spilled liquid on the floor. It's because spilled liquids can either burn you, spilled liquids can cause accidents such as falls and other different accidents. There should be a manual or instructional guide on how to treat spills of different chemical substances. This is very much true, that if spills are on the floor, let's say it's the concentrated acids, you should have the instruction on how to treat them, on how to clean them. If they are concentrated acids, maybe they might require neutralization. So you require to have a base to neutralize them. Don't just take water and power on it and sweep or mop so as to remove that spilled liquids. No, ask on how to clean such kind of spilled liquids. So you need an instruction on how to clean them. Also, gas cylinders should be labeled. It should be kept or stored well and supported. They should be in a good working condition at all times. Yes, gas cylinders should be well checked and they should be labeled and well positioned, because if you don't position properly the gas cylinders, they might fall down, and if they fall down they can lead to leakage, or they can lead to leakage of gases which can result into accidents of fire in the laboratory. So you better label the gas cylinders. Never carry reagents bottles by their neck. Never carry reagents bottles by a neck. This is also very much important, that reagent bottles should not be carried by their neck, because carrying the reagents by their neck can result to breakage into such kind of an apparatus, and then it will result into an accident whereby that chemical, specific chemical, can burn you, or that broken glassware can cut you and lead you to an accident. Dear students, we have discussed a lot on the rules or before doing a practical activity, and rules when doing practical activity, rules after doing practical activities, and the safety measures that should be taken within the laboratory. Now, I hope that you are now aware on how to work in the laboratory safely. So, if we follow those rules, you minimize the risk of having hazards within the laboratory. If you follow those regulations, you make yourself to the safe position of working in the laboratory. If you follow those regulations, can also help you to use them even at your home, because we have seen some of the regulations that can also be applied at your home. Example, don't use broken apparatuses, closing of the water taps after conducting experiments. You also have some water taps at your home. So please, after using the water taps, you close them. You also have gas taps at your home. After cooking, after doing a certain activity that involved heat, you turn off the gas. But you have seen that you are required to open the windows properly for proper ventilation. You should also open windows at your home, that you allow fresh air to enter and you allow comfortable breathing environment at your home. There are several rules that can reflect the rules also applied at your home. So use them even at your home, use them somewhere else that they can be applied. Now let us see some questions concerning this topic. There are some questions, there are almost 5. Let's start with question number 1. It states that some of the experiments done in a school laboratory are similar to daily life activities. in our homes. Hence, some of the laboratory rules may also apply in our homes. What are the 3 laboratory rules that you think applies to our homes? You see, that is the type of the question that can be asked. Can you think, student, can you think of the rules that is applied at the school chemistry laboratory and they also can be applied at your home place? We discussed a lot of them. Now, let's try to respond on this question. Rules. It's question number 1. Rule number 1, close water taps and gas taps after use. This can be applied in the laboratory and it can also be applied at your home. Don't use broken or cracked apparatuses. You also have some glass-made utensils at your home. So, should not use broken or cracked apparatus because it can break and cut you if it is cracked, but a broken apparatus can cut you. Report. When you are in a chemistry laboratory, you are required to report an accident immediately. You can also have an accident at home. So students, you are required to report to your parents in case of an accident. There are many other rules that can apply from the chemistry laboratory and they can also apply at home. Let's go to question number 2. What are the importance of the following? Washing your hands with soap after the experiment. Washing your hands with soap after experiment. Class, that is question number 2. It is asking you about the importance of washing your hands with soap. Washing your hands with soap makes you to remove the contaminated, harmful substances that might have been in touch with you. So you are required to wash your hands with soap so as to be safe after doing a practical activity. Reporting an accident immediately once it happens. What is the importance of reporting? It's that when you report immediately an accident, you can get an immediate help from your teacher or laboratory assistant. Keeping inflammable chemicals away from flames. What is the importance of keeping inflammable chemicals away from flames? And turning off water gas taps immediately after use. Now students, you will perform these 2. Keeping inflammable chemicals away from flames, turning off water gas and taps and the gas taps immediately after use. So long as I have performed these 2, you now try to perform the 2 questions. Let's see question number 3. This question says that, why should we observe safety rules and precautions when working in the laboratory? Why should we observe safety rules and precautions when working in the laboratory? We have discussed some of the safety measures in the laboratory. We have discussed the rules before, after, during practical activities. What do you think that we should observe? Why should we observe these rules and safety measures? It's because observing rules and safety measures in the laboratory prevents you from having an accident, makes you safe. And it doesn't only make you safe, it makes all people within the laboratory safe. It also minimizes the chances or the risk of having different hazards or accidents in the laboratory. So you are required to observe rules, safety rules in the laboratory. Let's see question number 4. Question number 4. What would be likely to happen to a student doing experiment in the laboratory under the following conditions? Noise and a dirty laboratory room. What do you think is likely to happen working in a noise and a dirty laboratory room? Working in noise laboratory room removes concentration of other students or other people who are concentrating doing their practicals, so you will disturb them, move their attentions to their practical activities, and it can result to them getting long answers. But also it also disturbs you when you are working in a noisy condition. It can disturb you and fail to collect the required data. So you are not actually advised not to work in a noisy laboratory. But a dirty laboratory, let's say you are working in a laboratory with a lot of dust, with a lot of speed liquids, with a lot of broken glasses. This is a very dangerous working in a dirty laboratory room. It's because the dust can contaminate with your chemicals. The dust can make you not to get proper answers for your conducted experiments. No gloves, no goggles, or laboratory coat. You remember we discussed this from the presentation. Please, wearing gloves prevents your hands from contamination of harmful chemicals. That is the advantage of it. Wearing goggles prevents you from being harmed from directly into your eyes. There are some chemicals that are explosive, others are poisonous gases or harmful gases. So when you put on goggles, it prevents you from such kind of harmful chemicals. And also, wearing laboratory coat it prevents you from being in contact with the harmful chemicals or being dirty. Your clothes could be dirty in case of spilled liquids, or being burnt even some hot liquids. So students will also try to perform the remaining question, that open bottles containing chemicals. What would likely to happen when someone is working, doing an experiment under the following condition? The open bottles containing chemicals. So think you can manage to explain this very correctly, so try to do it. And also we have question number 5. This question states that as a chemist student suggests, you have visited a certain school laboratory which is not properly managed. What piece of advice would you give to a laboratory manager for the following observations? You are now a chemist, you are now an expert, now you are required to give an advice to this manager. And I'm sure you can do it in a better way and very correct. So please, I leave this assignment to you, perform it, and you submit it. So the question, you are required to advise the manager for the following observation. 1, poisonous chemicals left in an unlocked cupboard. Found the poisonous chemicals left in an unlocked cupboard. A smell of a gas. There was a smell of a gas. 3, concentrated acid stored in the uppermost shelf of the cupboard. So these are the conditions that you observed in that laboratory. So you are required to advise this lab manager. So I think students, you can perform this question and I hope you can perform it very correctly because we have discussed a lot about this. Those are some of the references that you can pass through them and add some more knowledge on laboratory techniques and safety. And thereafter, I would like to thank you very much. I hope that you have now enjoyed the lesson and you can now respond very correctly to some questions concerning laboratory techniques and safety, and you can now work in the lab very efficiently and safely. Thank you very much.